Love that.
Loving our themes. And speaking of themes, I think it's time to move on to Hairball.
Hey.
Sup? Okay. Uh, so I've been kind of nervous to bring this up because it's not really mentioned a lot, and then when it is, I've seen a lot of backlash, but it's just my own experience. So yeah, I was raised in England. I've been in a lot of places where like I was one of the only colored kids, and there was just a lot of ignorance. And I got used to it really fast. So I'm kind of, I think because of that, I'm into like dark humor. I'm into things that's just like, I can laugh a lot of stuff off.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a really good thing to have nowadays. So
Yes.
in that way, I'm kind of like Red Queen in that there's not a lot of things that can really surprise me now.
Mm.
But this world is crazy. There's a possibility.
Yeah.
But something that I've felt the whole time, I never felt like inadequate. I never felt victimized.
Mhm.
I never, yeah. And like whenever someone brought up like any racial stuff, a lot of people like kind of assumed that I dealt with racism. Like, not really. And I know I'm super blessed for that, and I'm not dismissing any other person's experience with it. But the thing is, I I can't just be like, I don't know. I'm really bad with my words, so bear with me.
You're doing good.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I've seen now with just the people around me is how do you take what happens in front of you? How do you accept it? How do you receive it?
Mhm.
And like I said, a lot of times I'm very gracious because most of the times I can read the situation and I could tell the person's just ignorant of the situation, and I can walk them through it because I'm their friend. But when the person is literally just generalizing just to get their point across, then that needs to like be addressed, and like any sort of rudeness needs to be addressed. I've only experienced one like racist experience, and I'm so happy for that. And it was pretty mild. um it was this lady, an older lady at Walmart on a wheelchair.
Mhm.
um I wasn't the fault because I was young and my parents let me like test out one of the bikes in the biking area, and I like turned the corner too quick and she was like right there, and I stopped really fast. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Just apologizing all over the place. But she was furious. It's like, where's your parents? So took her to her parents, and the lady just went off. And
Mm.
the one of the first things she says was, I'm a red-blooded American. I just I deserve to be treated well. Or like to that extent, and then like kind of hinting at go back to your country to my parents. And my mom is a firecracker, so she like lit up, and my dad was trying to calm her down, but he brought up the whole, she was the one that served in the military, so she was like, I served you in the military, so you should give me respect and stuff like that. And like she was born in the US too, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Those
So
Thanksgiving clapbacks.
yeah, back to the topic. I've just seen a lot within the friend groups and types of people I've been around. A lot of my black friends in public school, because that's like the kind of the main area that I've seen this in. Um, most of them that I've met are like very like victimized. Like I understand that that is you've seen a lot of bad in your life, but a lot of times it's how do you take it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the theme I'm picking up here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is your initial word was just sort of like you laughed at it. So the theme I'm picking up from you is humor, laughter, as sort of a way to kind of heal. And I get that, to be honest, because growing up in a small town on a small farm in the South with very religious and conservative parents, I did have a fear of expressing my sexuality and everything. I Part of me is kind of glad because now my sexuality doesn't define me. I was able to, even though if I was like suppressed it, um, I'm able to be me without my sexuality taking over. But to go back to your laughter thing, I haven't really, experienced a lot of like homophobia, I guess I would say, or like discrimination for my sexuality. But the one time I did was when I was holding hands with my ex. We were walking down the street downtown, and I didn't hear this, but he did. And the guy just yells out faggots, and he turns around and he's ready to fight. Like he's legitimately pissed off and he's angry, and I'm over here like, let's cross the street, it's shady. And then like I didn't realize, I didn't even hear it, I didn't realize why he was angry. And then he told me like a little later on, he was like, because I was trying to talk to him, I was like, what happened? And he was like, you called us faggots. And I'm like, well, he's not wrong. We are. And I very much had the mentality to, like, if I had heard it, I definitely would have said, thank you, and kind of moved on with that. Turn around as a joke. And I do understand, like, the word and its history. I actually had it explained to me by an older coworker who accidentally said it in front of me, and then he stood up, shocked, I tell you, just completely appalled that those words came out of his mouth. He's an older man, and I've heard him say way worse when he's frustrated. So I didn't think anything of it, but he just started profusely, like apologizing, and I'm like, you're fine, you're okay. I know it didn't come from like a place of hatred, and even if it did, water on a duck's back. How does your words affect me? Because words have so much power. Like, only have so much power. Like,
words only have the power that you allow them to have over you.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to say.
Can I comment that though?
Mm-hmm.
You have been very blessed in that aspect. Then there was no coming out of the closet for me. I've always been out, whether or not I wanted to be. So there is a point of playing the victim, and there's also the point of you're tired of hearing this. I have also lost friends because they were to death, because they were a person of color, because they were LGBT. I've had friends who get attacked and wake up on the street corner the next day. Words have tremendous power, and there is a victim mindset. Read the room, obviously. If it's some old git who's old and just, bye. But there is, I think, a very realistic point of, no, this is not right, and it's time to stand up. There is a time, there's the call to action, and there is the call to peace. And I think it depends on, there's a great Doctor Who, I'm going to quote Doctor Who, when they say it's, shit hits the fan, they don't say that. They say, well, when a quiet man goes to war, when a peaceful man goes to war, it speaks volumes. And I think, not disrespecting that, but depending on where you live, depending on what you have experienced, it definitely becomes more of a trigger. For me, I've been called every name in the book. And majority of the time, I just keep dancing and living my life. I live my best life. I let my hair down, paint my nails, feeling good as hell. But no, there it's so tough. It's a tough, and every situation is individual.
Right. Yeah.
I don't really know where I'm going with this. I'm starting to ramble, but
No,
I'll turn it back over. Please.
I can add on. I will say, I think as far back as I can remember, this was the first time that I experienced like direct racism.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the 2nd grade and we were on a field trip, and I was the only Black person in the class, and there was a half Asian girl in our class, and she was white passing. I don't think most people in our class at the time knew that she was half Asian.
Right.
But one of the boys in the class called me a dirty monkey, and I'm sorry, your expression, thank you. He called me a dirty monkey, and I got upset about it, but like, I didn't connect it to anything racist at the time. I was just like, first of all, don't call me a monkey and I'm clean. Like, I just thought it was rude, right?
Yeah.
So I was telling my older brother about it that day when I got home, and my dad overheard and flipped out.
Yeah.
And that's when it connected that, oh, that was like directed at me in a very negative, antagonistic way.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree to an extent. Obviously, yes, I agree with what you're saying, Peter. Words have meaning, because that was intended to harm me from a 2nd grader. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So words have meaning.
But it's also a 2nd grader.
Yeah. Words have meaning. And I will also say that you can call me any name in the book now, and I don't care about your opinion of me, especially if you don't know me. If you're just walking by me, or you happen to see like this one moment of my life and you judge me completely based on that, I'm not inclined to care about your opinion of me.
Right.
I will follow up by saying, if I do get upset over being called out my name, especially in a racist way, and you tell me to let it go because you don't understand it, that's going to bother me even more.
Yeah.
It's okay. And I will say, like, Nia, to your point, like, everybody's not going to experience racism, or like to a certain degree, of course. And everybody, like every minority's experience is different. People will look at you and be like, oh, she's a minority in America. But they don't know, where you were born, and they don't know like the culture that you were primarily raised in. They just look at you and they're like, oh, she doesn't look like an American. Her family doesn't look like Americans. And they make those assumptions about you. But in everybody's experience in that regard is different. Everybody's going to have a little bit of that in different areas. But it's one of those things, and it kind of goes back to having empathy for other people. If you haven't experienced it, don't, and I'm not saying that this is what you were doing with your friends, by the way, just want to throw that out there. But if you haven't experienced, don't downplay my experience, because I have. And then don't like say that I'm overreacting if you've never been called those names before, and if you've never experienced somebody trying to put you down based on, the color of your skin or any type of external difference that you might have. Even if it's not like a physical thing, if it's the way that you present yourself, the way that you walk, the way that you talk, the way that you react to certain things. If somebody's trying to make you small because they think that attribute that is connected to you is inferior or beneath them, or they're better than you because they don't have it, I do understand why people get upset about those things. I've gotten upset about those things. So it's one of those things, to go back to having sympathy for people if you can't have empathy for them. And then don't try to dismiss someone's, when somebody's been slighted against in those regards. Because that's how those like underhanded racist comments still continue, and those
Right.
underhanded like what do they call it? Those
Passive aggressive,
well, yeah,
Microaggressions.
microaggressions.
microaggressions. There's like backhanded compliments and things like that.
Mhm.
Like I saw it's. I think the show is called Blackish.
Blackish.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, but I did see a clip, just like a short few minutes from it. And the mother is a doctor, yeah, and they were in the hospital, and a white lady had approached her, a white doctor, and was like, "Oh, where did you go to school?" And she named a school, and she goes, "Oh, that's good for you."
Yeah.
And then she tried to explain it to a different doctor who was also white but was male, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that is good for you." And she was like, "That's not the issue. It's the for you part. That's the issue." She could have just said, "That's a good school. That's a good education." But it was the for you that implied, you know, that she like did something extraordinary by getting in there. That like she specifically.
For
So it's,
someone, yeah.
yeah, it's those little comments that people tend to ignore, and those are the ones that people will say like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Don't think too much of it," or "Oh, just brush it off." And it's like, no, that's an issue that needs to be
Right.
addressed, that needs to be stopped.
Yeah, and I definitely don't want to dismiss that. Like, we are at a time in our society where that shouldn't even be brought up anymore. Like, comments like that shouldn't be said. What I'm trying to say is I've met a lot of people who bring up race when it's not even part of the issue of like what you're talking about.
Which is a form of racism.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't want to be like too detailed, but like my dad does stuff like that still to this day. But I saw a lot of that in him when I was younger. So if I'm following your train of thought correctly, it's when people use the race card to play the victim.
Yes.
Not that
Yeah,
they get upset over, you know, racial comments and stuff, but that they will just throw that race card out there as a free pass to be upset or to, you know, lash back at people and things like that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to say. It's
Sorry, I was going to quote a TV show, Archer. Mallory Archer, she's borderline prejudice, but I think that's part of the joke because you know she's an older woman and
Satire.
yeah, it's satire, right? And oh my God, what Peter? What's her name? Lana, thank you, Lana Kane. I knew it started with an A. I was like Lara, Lana Kane. She had said something about, you know, something being racist, and then Mallory was just like, "Oh, put it back in the deck." And that was funny to me. But yeah, it is satire. I think there is a lot of power in laughter. A lot of comedians, you know, they do make jokes, and some of them may make inappropriate jokes, but Shaq, what was that comedian you were talking about? They have he's a white guy, but he has a black daughter, and he was talking about he literally has to baste his daughter for like her hair and everything.
Okay, so I love stand-up comedy. It's one of like my favorite like pastimes of like just to like release and let go. And I do think that when jokes that highlight differences in culture are done tastefully, it's like the best thing ever because it's not something that you think about. And there was a white comedian, I cannot remember his name. This is the only video that I saw of him, but I will remember it until the day I die. He was talking about how him and his wife had tried for years to have a child and they were unable to have a child, so they adopted. And they're both white and they adopted a black baby and they had taken her to the doctors just to get like her little checkups and things like that or whatever. And the doctor was explaining like, hey, like, you know, her skin is a little bit different than yours. You're going to need to like moisturize her skin. And he had taken his daughter to the doctor while his wife was like running other errands and stuff like that for her. And he was like, okay, I'm going to make a mental note of all this to let my wife know. And the doctor was explaining that he could put like oil on her skin every day just to keep it moisturized and stuff like that. And he's like, vegetable oil, olive oil.
Getting
Like he didn't
scared.
understand ever
Right.
and he was like, I'm gonna have to explain to my wife, we're gonna have to baste our baby every day. Because he had never heard of using oil to moisturize your skin and stuff like that. And it was one of like my most favorite things ever. Because yes, there's a difference in our skin and our hair texture, like we were talking about earlier, and we do have different routines and different products that work better for our skin than what other people might be able to use. But it was just the best thing. It was the best.
Well, it's putting it in good taste.
Yeah.
You know.
We should all watch videos like that. They're amazing.
Well,
Oh,
I'm gonna actually. Oh no! Please go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
I'm the host. Go ahead.
Okay, so talking about that, that's funny. One of the things we talk about in cosmetology is the anatomy of shampoo, what goes into shampoo. And there's a really funny SNL sketch with Sofia Vergara and Kate McCannon playing Penelope Cruz. And it's really funny because they actually, like, Penelope or Sophia gets like, they have to describe the hair products. She's like, Lush. And the other one gets Telogen. And so like start getting these like more, she goes, no, the words are the same kind of easiness between both of you guys. And she's like, no, she gets words like Lush and I get phytomorphogenesis. And it's funny because I stumble over the words when I teach it sometimes. And it was funny to show the video and watch it in my own home. I've shown it to my friends who are
You showed it to me.
The Latin and Hispanic community, and they've laughed. But then I sat there and I showed it to my students when we switched from COVID to teaching online. And I was like, I don't get to preface this video as much. They can go into the Blackboard and do these course online. They don't get the reference I'm getting. And I looked at it and I was like, is this funny now? Or is this starting to make fun of the fact that both of these women speak English as a second language and a white director is telling them how to say the words correctly? Where is the balance of satire and being offensive? And I ultimately made the choice to remove it from the class. Not that there was necessarily something right or wrong, because a lot of my friends were like, oh, it's funny. It is genuinely funny. But I was like, I don't ever want to promote an environment for my students where they don't feel comfortable coming to me, or they go, if they have had a bad experience, not being too PC, but an educational classroom is, of course, a very different arena. And I didn't want to promote the idea of like, I see you as a stereotype. And again, spheres of influence, how well do you know someone? Now I could show, and at that time I had, and the only reason, for some reason, and this is my ignorance, it came to mind as offensive possibly, is I realized as I sent them to go watch the video and do the assignments, it's like, oh gosh, Maria and Gabriela are both Latina. What if they take it? And they didn't take it the wrong way. They took it, they laughed, they thought it was funny. But I thought, I should have thought about this before I posted this video. And that, I hope, was the right step. But what I want for people to do is question, why do we find things funny? Why are we looking at things and perceiving them the way we are? And again, sphere of influence. How, like, now I can show them anything and they laugh because they know who I am. It doesn't mean I get to be racist, but it means I get to, we can respect satire then.
Yeah.
Just like you were saying, versus, no, you're just stereotyping. To base someone's, and hearing it out of context. You're going to base your child's head? What's wrong with you? Versus in the proper setting. Yeah. So that's just, again, perspective. All right, I'm done.
I'm really glad you did that for your class. I mean,
yeah.
There was.
Good.
There was one instance with Shaq and I, and I didn't realize this was a stereotype of white people, but I was over, like, I think this was the first time we actually had like our own places. Like, you were living like off campus, and I had my own apartment and everything. And I was like, oh, I can cook for you now. And you just immediately, you were like, no. And I was like, well, why not? I was like, I can cook you. I'm a good cook. Like, I've been cooking for myself and like my family and everything. And she was just like, nope. And I was like, well, why? And finally you said, white people don't know how to season their food. And I got super offended. I was like, excuse me, eat my food before you judge it. Because I seasoned the hell out of it. So much salt. So much salt.
But I love that chefs actually reinforce that too.
Mm-hmm.
Of all walks of life.
Just salt.
I was gonna say too, yeah.
Or not just paprika also. Because that also seems to be the go-to. Oh, I got a slice of paprika.
Oh yeah, pepper. No. You gotta do pepper, salt and pepper. You gotta salt and pepper your food. All of it.
Where's the Old Bay? Where's...
It was a running joke for a while because even when we'd be down in North Carolina for, you know, super like different events and stuff or whatever, we'd like somebody would be cooking whatever, and then we'd crack jokes about it and be like, oh, that's really spicy, you put a lot of salt in that today, type of thing. Like just that, like that stereotype, that like running joke type of thing. I will say, like, culturally though, my family was just never open about eating other people's food. Just because, like, you never know what they do with it. Did you clean your chicken? You know, where did that come from? You know, things like that. Like, and then there was always this thing with people who have pets and let their pets just run around the kitchen and on the counters and stuff like that while you're trying to cook. So there was always like this fear in my family, like my immediate family and stuff. Like you don't cook, you don't eat everybody's cooking. Like that's not a. But yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah.
All right. Any final highlights before we move on to Chris?
Kind of with what Jasenia was saying. After we watched Queen and Slim, and we went and ate Korean food, I think you were trying to explain like your concern you brought up to me, and I didn't get it. Is that kind of what you were like? What we talked about now? Is that okay?
Yeah, like with this whole, with everything going on related to racism, there's so many angles, and that's just one angle I've seen a lot in my life. So I just wanted to share it because that's what I've seen.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing it.